again. For the class, of course, they have to join. And for those who just join us, thank you very much for your time. I hope you will enjoy our program today. So today's topic, we are going to talk about ways of life, do's and don'ts, as well as dating across culture. Is that right, sir?
That sounds right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if you have any question for those who just join us, uh, you do not need to drop your questions on the chat box. You are free and have a good time to ask the question directly to the speaker. All right. So for the cross-cultural understanding students, that's the time for you to practice your English by asking questions. Please be active. It's a rare opportunity. Actually, we have. All right. So we are going to start, and then I would like to ask Hannah Teresia. Would you please start with a prayer?
Yes, ma'am. Let us pray. Our Father which art in heaven, thank you so much for your blessing. Now we want to start our program. Please bless us and please bless our speaker for today. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Hannah. So, Sir Hibbert, the time is yours.
Okay. You can see me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And you can hear me okay? All right. Well, Marlene, once again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to take part in your class. This is a great privilege for me, as I mentioned last time. Very, very special, very special. You maybe do not, of course, you haven't experienced this kind of special experience because you're still young, but one day you will when your students become teachers and are active in teaching, and then you have the opportunity to interact with them. It's a wonderful experience. So it's a great joy for me, and it's also great joy to visit with some of our old friends on club. Okay, can you still hear me? Can you still see me? I kind of.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Very good.
All right, I'm going to just take a few minutes to just go over what we spoke about last time, okay? It's important to review. I'm not going to give you a test, students, so just relax and try to remember some of the things that we learned last time together. I'm not going to do everything, but just the highlights. Okay, so let's review. Where did it go off again? Oh dear, this is not good. Just a minute. Okay, I'm gonna have to try again. Just hold on. As I say, this is something. Let me just see here. Okay. Okay, so I think that's it. All right, so let's just review quickly. As Marlene has told us, we're going to look at topics 3, 4, and 5 today. Ways of life, do's and don'ts, and dating across cultures. Okay. Let's review. What did we say culture was? What is culture? Remember that culture changes. Culture is dynamic. It's shared by a group. It's not uniform. It's not rigid. And it's passed down from generation to generation by parents and also through secondary sources like schools. And it's sometimes conscious and it's sometimes unconscious, right? And it consists of patterns of meaning. And these patterns of meaning help us to understand the behavior of other people. Okay, and remember we said there are 4 layers to culture, right? The first layer was what we call the human universals. Those things that we all share in common, and we have a common need for them. And then there was layer number 2. And layer number 2 is that national culture, or the largest cultural unit. Okay, for example, we said Indonesian, right? And then there's layer number 3, which involves a subculture. And a subculture could be like Manadonese, Javanese, Batak culture. Those are subcultures. And then, of course, there's the 4th layer. And what was the 4th layer? The 4th layer was your new, unique individual culture, you might say. It reflects the role of unique individuals within a subculture or a national culture. And we're going to spend time looking at this level in a little while, okay? So that's a little bit about culture. And then we looked at communication, right? What is communication? And we learned that communication, to be human means to communicate, right? We cannot not communicate. And the goal of communication is always to inform or to persuade. And it's a complex process, very complex process. And it takes place through multiple channels, can be verbal, nonverbal, can be written, different ways that we communicate. And then the last one there, the foundational consideration for all effective intercultural communication should be, now what does it say there? What can I do to build trust on the part of my audience? And I said, that's very important. And if you remember correctly, that is where I shared with you something that we can do to enhance this, or to answer this question. What can I do to build trust in my audience, or the person to whom I am speaking, okay? And this is where we took a look at our theological basis, all right, for communication, all right? What is the theological basis, especially for us as Christians? We're Christian students mostly, I guess, studying at a Christian school, and we need to make sure we understand the fundamental principles. And this is what I believe. God is love, and he desires that we respond to him in love as we become ever more loving and lovable people. Okay, so for me, that's a fundamental principle that we as Christians ascribe to, okay? That we believe God is love, and he wants us to respond to him in the way that he loves us, right? And in doing this, we become more and more loving people and more lovable people. When we talk about loving people, it's what we do, right? And when we talk about being lovable people, it is how we are as individuals. So being a loving and lovable person will go a long way to building trust in your audience as you engage in intercultural communication. So that is a little bit of a Christian perspective on the intercultural communication process. Okay. So intercultural communication is the cultural intelligence that we use as we try to meaningfully interact with people and understand people from other cultures. So it's important. So that you want to gain as much cultural intelligence as you can, both through theoretical learning, book learning, as well as practical experiences where you actually engage in cross-cultural encounters, right? Okay, so then we ask the question, what are cultural values, right? What are these values that are very important? Well, we learned that they're deeply held values that serve as guiding principles, and they determine cultural perceptions and behaviors. Values are very, very important. They form the customs, guide behaviors, and shape cultural attitudes. And remember that we use these cultural values to judge certain ideas, whether they are right or wrong, good or bad, important or unimportant, or desirable or undesirable, right? That's how we use these cultural values. And how do we get them? Again, same way we get culture right, they are learned, mostly subconsciously, and are hidden deep within a language or the traditions of a society. Not easy to dig, and discover them. Fortunately, many people have done research, right, that helps us to understand different cultures. And of course, children are taught and naturally learn these beliefs, norms, values, customs, and traditions, manners of the unique family, and those of the larger culture, community, or society. Okay, so that's what we learned last week. And also we looked at two theories, right, of value classification. And the first one that we looked at was by Hofstede. And there were 6 value dimensions. Those were individualism, collectivism, power distance, uncertainty avoidance, masculinity, femininity, long and versus short-term orientation, and indulgence versus restraint. And remember, we understand that this is a continuum, right? And each of these positions is on one end of the continuum. And then there are positions in between these two bookends, if you might say. So different cultures are in different places on the value dimensions continuum. Okay, so that was the research done by Hofstede. And then we looked at one other one, which was the Kluckhohn-Strodbeck value orientations theory. And if you remember correctly, this was a series of basic questions, right, that answer basic problems that we face in life. Okay, and every culture has a basic need for survival, and they must answer these universal questions. And this theory is based on these questions, and then different 5 categories with 3 possible responses to each of the different 5 categories. So we're not going to go into that now. I just wanted to remind you of what we learned last time. So if you have time, you can review yourself. Okay, so this brings us to today. And one of the topics your teacher gave to me was ways of life. Well, I wondered, what is being asked of me here in this with this particular topic? And then I realized that it's probably what is known also as life mode, or more familiar to you all would be lifestyle. And so today we're going to take a look at what does lifestyle mean in the context of culture, So also, before I forget, one student asked me last time to elaborate on the concept of being a loving and lovable person in terms of intercultural communication. And I will share a little bit about that when we look at the do's and don'ts on intercultural communication. Okay, I just wanted to remind myself and you of that. Okay, so the first thing that we want to observe when it comes to culture and lifestyle is that these are two different concepts. However, they are interconnected. Okay, they're interconnected. And the connection between these two concepts is that lifestyle is influenced by cultural components. Those cultural components such as traditions, values, and many other aspects of social aspects, right? These aspects of culture influence lifestyles, okay? And lifestyle, therefore, is a part of culture. You cannot divorce the two, right? It's a part of culture and can be defined as the way of life of an individual or group of people within a broader cultural group. Okay, so let me read what I've written there. Culture can be defined as the totality of behavior, thoughts, and customs and practices of a group of people, whereas lifestyle can be defined as the way of life of an individual or group of people. Okay, just be patient. It'll become clearer to you as we go along. So the question we want to ask then is, what is lifestyle? Okay, what is life? We've looked at culture before, right? So what is lifestyle? Many people say that probably the most dominant aspect that influences lifestyle is the standard of living. What do we mean by the standard of living? Basically, the standard of living is your quality of life, the quality of life that you have. Some people have a high standard of living, right? Mostly those are the well-educated and the wealthier people, right? And then you have the middle class, and then we have the lower class. So what influences these is often, as I said, wealth, power, yeah, as in the governing class, politicians perhaps, and wealth, power, and education. Those often contribute significantly to the standard of living of people. And so there are upper class lifestyles and middle class lifestyles and lower class lifestyles. And we'll look at this in a little more detail later on. So another thing is that lifestyles may vary from person to person. Okay, so even though two people may come from the same cultural group, they may have different or live different lifestyles. Okay, people in the same culture have different lifestyles. Okay, we'll give examples of this in a little while. We also must remember that people can have differences in their lifestyle based on their background. Okay, and let's look at what we have in common. If you remember last time I said that you and I, even though we live on the opposite sides of the earth at this time, we have things in common culturally. And we determined that one of those things that we have in common is our religion, right? And your religious background can be unique. In other words, it can be different from other people in your cultural group, right? And that is true in Indonesia. How does our religious lifestyle differ from the lifestyle of other religious groups in Indonesia? Let's say, for example, Indonesia. Well, in our particular Seventh-day Adventist Christian lifestyle, we know that how we keep the Sabbath, right? Sabbath observance is something that is unique to us as individuals and impacts our religious lifestyle, even the kinds of food that you eat, right? The food that you eat. There are certain foods that you don't eat, as opposed to other religious groups who do not have the same dietary restrictions. So backgrounds, there are now different kinds of backgrounds. People may differ in economic background, political background, philosophical background, social backgrounds. Some people may be conservative and some people may be liberal and in between, right? So you may live a conservative lifestyle or you may live a liberal lifestyle. But you can both be Indonesians, right? And have an Indonesian culture. When it comes to philosophical backgrounds, there are many philosophical issues that determine the kind of lifestyle you choose, right? The kind of lifestyle you choose. Okay, so can you think of different kinds of lifestyles? I want you to put your thinking caps on, and I want you to think, can you think of any kinds of lifestyles? Anybody like to suggest a lifestyle that you know of or that you have? Perhaps you have that lifestyle. All right, let's think about how active you are. Are you an active person? Do you subscribe to an active lifestyle? What would that be? You're energetic, you like to go out, you like to be outdoors, you like to do things outside, you like to play sport, right?
Hang out.
Hang out?
Swimming.
Swimming, yeah, swimming, sure. What is the opposite of that active lifestyle that other people may choose?
Staying home.
Staying home, you're right, staying home. And we sometimes call that a sedentary lifestyle, right? Where you're not very active. Sometimes people can negatively say that you're a couch potato, right? You know what a couch potato is? Somebody who likes to sit and watch TV all day, all right? So in other words, some people are very active on one end and other people are sedentary. They're not very active. But these are two lifestyles, right? There may be reasons why somebody chooses a sedentary lifestyle, right? So we do not want to be judgmental, right, of that lifestyle. Can you think of any other kinds of lifestyles?
Eating habit?
Did I hear you say eating habits?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Smoking?
How would you say that? How would you categorize that? Could you say healthy lifestyle? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Junk
think
food?
so. Healthy lifestyle, as opposed to junk food,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay, so, in your culture, in Indonesia, right, there are some people who are very concerned about health and living a healthy lifestyle, which may include diet and exercise, right? Um, so that is another kind of lifestyle, right? One that's close to our hearts, right? As Christians, as Seventh-day Adventists, we promote healthful living, right? So we want to live healthy lifestyles. Any other kinds of lifestyles that you can think of? Anybody? So even though you're Indonesians, right, you have different lifestyles. Can you think of another lifestyle? Can you think of country lifestyle as opposed to city lifestyle? Angelina, you probably live in a city, right? So you're in a city lifestyle. In fact, maybe most of you, I don't know. But I'm sure there are some of you who prefer to be in the village, right? And living a more laid back country lifestyle. You'd prefer that, growing your own vegetables, fruit, or whatever. It's a choice, right? It's a choice you make. It's a way you deal with challenges, with problems, with issues in your life, right? So that's how you adjust to life, by choosing different kinds of lifestyles. Any other kinds of lifestyles? Some people might want to, yeah, go ahead. Can you repeat, please?
It's Melissa, sir. Yeah. I think we have to live just like Jesus lived. Yeah. So we want us to love each other. Yeah. Some people, they like to be very selfish. Yeah. Just like the previous Sabbath school lesson, it said that we have to try to love each other. Yeah. Maybe I know as some people say it's just a theory. Yeah. Yes, I know it's difficult, especially if they hate us. Yeah. But Jesus said we have to try to love each other. Yeah. So, for example, yeah, we don't have to think that we have to. Jesus said we have to go uh, to the other countries. Sometimes we think we have to go to other countries to teach about the gospel, right? But I think the simple one is how we love each other. We have to love the people, for example, our neighbors, like that. Yeah. So we have to love each other.
That is,
So it
that
is
is,
difficult. I know sometimes it is very difficult, sir. But we have to ask Jesus to help us to love each other. I think it
that,
is a good, yeah,
that's
life.
very well said. Yes. And that's Lisa, right?
Yes, it's me.
Hi, Lisa. Nice to see you. Thank you for your comments. You know, that is so true, Lisa. And this is what we spoke about in our previous class, that the basic fundamental principle for us in our intercultural communication should be like what you said, that we are to love others, right? And we are also to be lovable people. So it's not just we love other people, but we must be able to be loved by other people. And I think this is so important. And if we function in this way, it will enable us to have much, much better relationships, not only with in an intercultural context, but also within your own culture. Thank you for that comment. So let me share with you some other kinds of lifestyles, you know, that you might, how about a vegetarian lifestyle? That's another one, right? How about a green lifestyle? What would that be? People choose to live in a certain way that is friendly toward the environment, right? Okay, that's another kind of lifestyle. And there are also extravagant lifestyles, right? There are materialistic lifestyles. People are seeking to gain more and more possessions. And there are also people who are socialites in their lifestyles. They like to, as somebody said, party, a lot, and they like to go out, they like to entertain, they like to spend money and have fun. So you can also have you can also choose a certain lifestyle when it comes to your clothing, right? Fashion. When you think of Indonesia, what comes to mind when you think of clothing? Do you have any unique clothing that Indonesians enjoy wearing? I can think of batik, right?
Yes.
Right, batik. But have you noticed that the batik that I wore when I went to Indonesia the first time, 40 years ago, the styles, the fashions, are definitely not the same as they are today, right? There are so many modern batik styles and fashions, right? And so changes. So now, if we think of which changes easier, culture or lifestyle, which do you think changes more easily? Lifestyle.
Culture.
Did somebody say culture? It is much more difficult to change culture. Okay, culture is very difficult to change. It is easier to change our lifestyles. And even though lifestyles, once again, are founded and encompassed by culture and the values that come from that culture, but it is still easier to change these lifestyle issues. Okay, so once again, a lifestyle enables individuals to feel comfortable within their social environment and to cope with life's difficulties, problems, and challenges. Okay, and it is the way people adjust to the realities of daily life. So if you think now, go back to those 4 levels of culture that we looked at earlier. This level definitely focuses more on level 4. Not entirely, because you can also have groups, but many people choose their own lifestyle. They choose what kind of lifestyle they want to have. Okay, so that's a little bit about lifestyles. Okay, so once again, just to summarize, there are many different kinds of lifestyles that people have chosen. And why do they do it? They do it to make sense of their world, to adjust to their world, to overcome problems in their world, in their environment, and to deal with different situations that arise in life, okay? To make them feel more comfortable. They want to feel more comfortable in their daily lives. And that's why people choose different lifestyles. And remember that people from the same culture can choose different lifestyles. And lifestyles are easier to change than culture. Culture is very deep and difficult to change. Now, I'd like to now kind of transition into some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to intercultural communication. And at this time, I want to go back to the student's question. I forget who it was. I don't know who it was. I don't remember who it was, who asked me, what does that loving and lovable person look like when it comes to intercultural communication? And so I was thinking about this this concept, right, of being a loving and lovable person. And I thought perhaps I can also express it in another way that may be a little more familiar to you. And by the way, if you would like to read more on the concept a loving and lovable Christian, this is a phrase that is used by Mrs. White in her writings. And she has some very interesting things to say about Christians who are loving and lovable people. And if you, I don't want to take the time now to go in, but do a little Google search. And if you Google search loving and lovable Christian, you will come up with a reference to the writings of Ellen G. White. And I think it will be worth your while to see what she says in terms of this concept. But that's another topic, right? And I was thinking that most of you probably know what the golden rule is, right? Do you know what the golden rule is?
Do to others.
There we go. Can you give me the whole thing? Do to others as you would have them do to you, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So this saying is a very powerful saying, and it's a truism, right? What we call truism, and it's a good saying. But what I notice about this saying is that it is only basically talking about actions, right? And not being. It's talking about doing and not being. So it says, do unto others, right? As you would have them do unto you, right? So what is that? That's talking about behavior, actions, right? So I thought to change it a little bit, to make it more, or modify it a little bit, so it's a little bit more, a little closer to what we're thinking here when we're talking about loving and lovable Christians or lovable people, is do and be to others as you would have them do and be like to you. All right? So I've added something there. I've added a little new dimension there. So it's not just doing, but it's being. All right? So do and be to others as you would have them do and be like to you. All right, so it's the same concept in a slightly different saying. So the question was asked, what does it look like, right? What does it look like? And so I took a little time to look at some of the character traits that we believe to be of value to us, right, in life. And of course, these are Christian traits, but they're not only for Christians, right? But Christians ascribe to these different character traits. And I'm going to share with you some of them here, and then we'll see how we can apply these to a intercultural communication context, okay? Of course, there are many, many lists of Christian or character traits, good character traits, yeah, or noble character traits. So, I'm sorry, I should have had this slide on. Here it is. You might want to be able to read it, might be easier. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, so this promotes action, but not being. So my modification to the saying is do and be to others as you would have them do or be like to you. Okay, so there's my little tip for the day right there. Okay. Okay, so here are some character traits. Okay, there's a long list of them and there are many more. All right, but I just selected a few of them and we'll try to look at some of them and see what it it looks like to be a loving and lovable person, and how it might help the intercultural communication process. Okay. Appreciation. We know that being appreciative is very important, right? People like to be appreciated, right? Being appreciated is very important. And it is important to be a thankful person, to be thankful for what you have, appreciative of what you have, and express thankfulness for the many opportunities that you have. And one opportunity that you want to be thankful for is when you have the opportunity to interact with a person from a different cultural group, right? Because that is an opportunity for you to learn, to grow, to mature, and learn and interact with somebody from a different culture. I think that's something that we would appreciate. And so if you have an attitude of appreciation when you enter into your intercultural communication event, all right, when you communicate with somebody else, okay, it does something to you, right? It makes you value the experience more, okay? So that's one way, that's one character trait, right, that we have. What about attentiveness? You know, one of the worst things is to speak to somebody and then you know that they're not listening to you. They're looking at you, but they're looking right through you, and they're not, you know, it is just not a nice experience, is it? And so when you engage with somebody, it's so important for you to be attentive, to pay attention to them, okay? And listen carefully. And don't interrupt, right? You don't want to interrupt all the time. That's terrible if you keep interrupting somebody and they cannot express themselves, and you're there interrupting. And, you know, be an interesting person and be interested in the other person that you're communicating with. I think that will, having that trait, that character trait of, it's kind of like respect, isn't it? You're respecting somebody else and what they're saying. And so you give them your full attention, right? You do this and it will help you in your communication. What about availability? That's another character trait, being available when people need you, right? So I think that if you make yourself available to somebody who is from a different culture, so you make yourself available to that person for assistance wherever possible, and I think that will be a good thing. That person will value that you make yourself available to help them when needed. And this is going to require that you sacrifice time and effort, right? It's going to mean time and effort. And as you make yourself available. How about caring? Caring is a character trait, right? How do you show that you care for somebody? Of course, you can do it by helping that person, right? By meeting their needs, right? By meeting their needs. And in a intercultural communication setting, the needs may vary, but if you care enough to meet the needs of your partner, it will go a long way to building trust, right? And remember what we said, the last point in effective communication is building trust within your audience. What about compassion? Well, compassion, of course, means to love, right? And we know that we are to love our neighbors as ourselves, right? And so much has been written on compassion. And compassion, of course, will definitely come through when you communicate with somebody of a different culture. What else is there? Concern. How do you show concern? How is that something that might enhance the intercultural communication experience? Well, when you show concern for someone, you are showing an interest in their well-being, right? In their well-being. And I think that's important. If somebody shows interest in you and your well-being, you are more likely to want to engage with that person, right? You're much more likely to want to engage with that person. How about when it comes to considerate? Considerate. You, in a cross-cultural context, you don't want to impose yourself on somebody else. Let them express themselves naturally and give that person enough space, right? And give them enough time. Don't be pushy. Be patient, right? Be patient and let them share with you whatever is on their mind or whatever they'd like to share with you. Dependability. What is dependability? Dependability basically is being trustworthy. You keep your promises, right? You keep your promises. And if you keep your promises, people will trust you. And when people trust you, they will be willing to engage with you more. Okay, how about dependability? Dependability, I'm sorry, discernment. Sorry, discernment. What is discernment? It means knowing when to do something and not to do something, right? So in a communication event, you want to know when to speak and when to be silent, right? That is very important because there's a time to talk, a time to listen, time to be silent, and that is being wise, right? Discernment is wisdom, knowing when to say something, when not to say something. Okay. What about fairness? Oh, this is very important, right? Be fair. And being fair, I think, means that you are aware that you have your own prejudices, your personal biases maybe, and that you want to always control those biases and prejudices that you may have, yeah? And you never want to allow those biases or prejudices to negatively impact the person that you're speaking to. So it's very, very important to be aware of yourself, okay, and be aware of being judgmental, okay, being judgmental. Oh, he's like that because he comes from here, or those kinds of thoughts are dangerous and can lead to misunderstanding and a breakdown in communication. Be flexible. Remember that there are many different perspectives on life, right? People think differently. They don't all think the same. And you must be willing to be flexible. People have different ways of living, different lifestyles, right? Different lifestyles. And what about generosity? Generosity, you've been blessed, right? You've been blessed. Be like a river and be a blessing to others, right? Be a blessing to others. And you can be a blessing to many people. And when you are generous, people see it and people appreciate it. And you know what? Many times people react to that in the same way. Okay, and I'm not talking about generous just in material things, right? You can be generous with your time, you can be generous with your energy and efforts. And then gentleness, of course, is a great trait, right? A great character trait, right? And you can avoid aggressive or coarse language, right? You don't want to use language that is not polite, and you want to avoid rough behavior, anything like that might distract or come across as being overbearing or aggressive. So be gentle, be gentle. So I'm not going to go through the whole list. It'll take a long time to go through it, but you can see there are many different character traits that we can use to be loving and lovable people to those around us. And if we put these traits into action, they will definitely help improve your intercultural communication, and they will help develop trust between you and the person you are talking to, and you will benefit. You will be able to benefit greatly. And that person you're talking to or engaging with will also benefit greatly. So there's a mutual benefit there. Okay, so this moves us now into the do's and don'ts, right? The do's and don'ts of intercultural communication. And of course, there are so many do's and don'ts that we can think of. And the challenge here is to think about the general principles and not the specific actions, because do's and don'ts can be different in different cultural settings. Okay, so what we're going to look at are some general do's and don'ts that you need to be aware of as you engage in a intercultural communication situation. Okay, so here are a few that I put down on the screen. When you communicate with somebody, keep in mind that most probably you're dealing with language issues, right? There are language constraints that you're having to deal with in your intercultural communication. And so you always want to make sure that you're keeping your message simple, okay? Keep your message simple, make sure it's clear, and make sure that you talk about familiar things, okay? Don't talk to somebody of a different cultural background about things that they are unlikely to know, okay? And not be familiar with. So it's important, be brief. Don't, make long speeches, but try to be as brief, simple as you can, and avoid using what we call cliches, words that are very localized, or words that are idioms, or phrases, or other kinds of unfamiliar language. Okay, avoid. You have to be proactive in this matter. You have to think it through and make sure that you're not using words and phrases that your listener will not understand. Again, it depends on the level of the person you're communicating with, right? There are some people who you communicate with whose level of language may be at a higher level. Of course, you'll have to adjust your communication or your use of language then. It's also very important to remember not to speak down to the person you are engaging with. Don't create the impression that you are better than they are, or you are more knowledgeable than they are. People don't like that. And so you want to try to treat somebody as your equal. Sometimes when people engage with people from other cultures, they try to change themselves and become somebody they're not, okay? And this is not a good way to, not a good thing to do when you are communicating with somebody. Be genuine in how you talk and what you say. All right. Don't pretend you're something that you're not. Okay. Don't pretend that you like something that you don't. All right. These things can get you into trouble, and many times people will be able to read between the lines, and they will see that, oh, you're not genuine. You're not genuine, and you're kind of play acting, which is not good. So let's see. That's an important thing for you to remember. Always be yourself, right? This is genuineness, and it's a fundamental basis for good intercultural communication. Okay, so another thing that you should be is be sensitive. All right. Now, what do we mean by being sensitive? How should we be sensitive? Well, you can be sensitive in your choice or your selection of topics, right? Things that you talk about. Some of the things that you generally don't want to talk about when you are engaging in intercultural communication is things like politics, right? You don't want to engage in political talk. Another thing that you want to avoid is religion. Okay, don't talk about religion. Okay, because religion is a very personal thing, and people have different beliefs and understandings of things, and you want to avoid that. Also, anything that is of a very personal nature, you want to avoid. You don't need to talk about details of a person's, how much money they make, and things like that. Now, I know that different cultures, certain things are okay, all right, but those are the kinds of things that you will be better off avoiding, not talking about. Now, having said that, it depends on your relationship, right? If your relationship grows and you become closer and closer, and you can then begin to talk about other things that you might not want to talk about in the beginning. Okay, so you'll have to use discretion, right? You'll have to use your own wisdom when it comes to that. So generally things of a moral nature you want to avoid, at least in the beginning. Okay. Like here in America, you want to avoid things like gender, and social relationships. You have to be very sensitive about. One thing that is very basic, I think, is to show empathy. What is empathy? Basically, it's putting yourself in the position of the other person and trying to experience things through their eyes. So whenever you're engaging with somebody in a cross-cultural situation, try to understand the other person's feelings, the other person's situations, their ideals, their goals. And it's a powerful communication tool. And there are two things it does, empathy, two things that it does. It helps you better understand those around you or the person you're talking to. So that's one thing, right? That's very valuable. And the other thing that it does is that it makes you more empathetic. In other words, you invite others to better understand yourself, okay, and your circumstances and your needs. So it's a two-way street, being showing empathy, being empathetic. Not only are you learning more about the person you're talking to, but that person is also learning more about you. So very important. How can we improve our empathy? Well, we can do that by engaging in different cross-cultural situations. Maybe you can visit different cultural events, go to different social activities, go to different ethnic restaurants, or even to places of worship. And you can learn more about how others feel, how they think. And that will always be of value in any intercultural communication activity. Of course, we always want to be aware of cultural differences, right? And we want to respect them. We want to be accepting of them. Now, what do we mean when we say we want to be accepting of them? It does not mean that you have to believe them, okay? In other words, accepting, being respectful of somebody else's different cultural values or different cultural traits, whatever it may be, does not mean that you agree necessarily with it, okay? But what it does mean that you affirm that they have this perspective on life and that you respect that perspective, okay? Even though you may not necessarily agree with it. You don't want to agree with something you don't agree with, right? That's not something that's artificial, right? And so when you accept somebody for who they are and what they believe in, okay, you're accepting that person as a person, okay, first and foremost, as a person. And even though you don't necessarily agree with all of their positions or perceptions or ideas or beliefs, that is very important. You know, some people, just because somebody does not think the same way as they do, then they don't want to engage. And that's very sad. That's very sad. So acceptance refers to the willingness to support and validate your colleagues, okay? To have a positive regard for them. And even in circumstances that you differ, you don't agree with. That is very important, and it will help. Also remember one thing, that even though you have areas of disagreement, you probably have many, many areas of agreement, okay? So, you know, it's sad if you're focusing on the areas of disagreement and ignoring the many areas of agreement that you have. So look for those things that you have in common, because those things can be bridges to those differences that are there. Okay, very important. Avoid judgments and generalizations. Now, if you go back to our last lesson, we spoke about stereotyping, right? We spoke about the danger of generalizing different cultural values of a group to everybody in that group, right? So that is something that we must avoid, because everybody's an individual. And even though somebody comes from a certain cultural group, it is not automatic that that person will necessarily have all of the same or identify with all of the same characteristics of that group. People differ, and you don't want to judge, right? You don't want to judge other people. So this is probably the most difficult, because it is natural for you to evaluate other people, right? That's kind of natural. We analyze people, and but judging people based on differences is not a good thing and can create many communication problems. So we need to consciously strive to be non-judgmental, right? Non-judgmental, even when you disagree. Okay, even when your values are different. Okay, all right. We also want to remember that what's the next one there? Stereotyping, right? Stereotyping. We studied that last time. The dangers of assigning the characteristics of a group to the individual. It's similar to what we mentioned earlier, and it's not a good thing to do. And we need to know as much about the culture. We need to know about the different aspects or the different categories, the values that are held dear by that culture, and how they sometimes surface in behaviors, right? That's important. But we must not take that and generalize it to every individual in the culture. So suspend your judgment, okay? Suspend your judgment. Be eager to learn and understand. All right. Be eager to learn and understand. If you're not sure, ask for confirmation or reconfirmation, right? So that your message, when you communicate with a person from a different culture, they can be, that you can be more sure that they've understood what you're saying. And pay attention to feedback, right? Because the feedback informs you whether your listener understands or doesn't, or they don't understand, right? So look for that feedback, okay? Sometimes we speak on autopilot, right? You know, we just speak, and we don't tune ourselves to look for those signs of feedback that may indicate a misunderstanding or an understanding, or maybe even a dislike, you know. So if you're aware of the feedback from the person you're talking to, that will help you a lot in learning about that person. Okay, where are we? Where are we here? Okay, this is important. Accept that you don't know everything and be sincere. Okay. You know, sometimes we make the mistake of thinking that a person from a different culture knows everything about their culture. And it's not the way it is, right? There are probably many, many things about Indonesian culture that you don't know. Okay. There may be even things about Indonesian culture that I know that you don't know, and vice versa, right? So just because a person comes from a different place does not necessarily mean that they know everything about that place. So be willing to learn and be willing to listen. Be humble, right? And accept that maybe your understanding was not correct, and be sincere. Okay, and remember that there are many different kinds of communication, and there is also the nonverbal dimension, right? How people stand, right? How people make gestures. It can tell you about that person, how they're feeling, the timing, how they speak, how the space and time, right? So you don't want to be too close, you don't want to be too far, and you want to make sure that you're sensitive toward that. Be aware of your body language, yeah, because people read body language, and you may come across as somebody who is disinterested, right? That's your body language, and that will impact your intercultural communication. So, you want to come across as what? Warm rather than cold, right? And remember that some gestures in your culture may not be the same as those gestures in another culture, right? In fact, some gestures may have a vulgar connotation when done in a different cultural context. So keep that in mind too. I just thought of some, well, okay. The last point that I have here is do not say anything hurtful or offensive, okay? And sometimes we do this when we interrupt, okay? Or we show impatience. It can offend somebody and they're hurt by it. So we have to be patient. We have to listen patiently. And something you should avoid doing, at least initially, okay, is avoid correcting that person's grammar and that person's pronunciation. Okay, you don't want to do that. Now, again, the caveat is that this is an introductory, or you don't know that person very well. If as time goes by and you become well acquainted with that person and you want to, that person asks you to correct them, oh, that's very different, right? That is very different. Okay, but we're talking about more initial contact, right? Where you're speaking to somebody without really knowing them that well. Okay, so avoid correcting them all the time, and it's not a good thing to do. One other thing that came to mind while I was, and I didn't put it down here, is that when you speak, make sure that you speak clearly, and that means enunciate your pronunciation well, enunciate your words well. Don't swallow your words, don't speak too quickly, and give that person as much opportunity to understand your words as possible. All right, so that kind of wraps up some of the do's and don'ts of intercultural communication. As I said, these are general do's and don'ts, okay? If you burrow into a specific cultural group, there are many things that you can add to this, all right? But that would take a long time. Okay, so that's that section done, and we have one more section, and this one is one that's close to my heart, near and dear to me, and that is dating across culture. Okay. I don't know why. I guess I'm not sure why Marlene asked me to present this topic. Maybe she thought that I am an expert in this area. Well, honestly, I feel I am rather an expert in this area. I've had the privilege of having an intercultural marriage for the past 38 years. And I've been tremendously blessed by it. And so I want to share with you, a few things about this. But before I do that, I want to kind of go back. I remember when I was when I was 24 years old, and I went to Indonesia for the first time, and made that trip up to Bandung to what is it? We went past Lembang, right? Lembang, and then went on to Unai. At that time, as I said, it was not Unai, it was Itka. And I remember, you know, after I met my future wife and got more and more acquainted with her, and then developed a relationship with her, I remember very clearly wanting to learn as much as I could about cross-cultural marriages, you know, cross-cultural relationships. And I remember going to the library on the 3rd floor of the Gedung Administrasi. And at that time, as I said, the library was on that floor. I don't know where the library is today at Unai. It was in there was only one administration building in those days. And I remember going through the library books, trying to find some theories on how to have a good cross-cultural marriage. And, you know, honestly, the information was scarce in those days. Right? Not much. But, you know, I do remember one thing. And I'm going to actually talk about that in these different issues. But I found something there that I took to heart and applied it in my life, and it helped me a lot. And I'll share that with you. So, you know, this experience takes me back, right? This topic takes me back, as I said, to, you know, 40 years ago when I first came to Indonesia. Came to Indonesia the first time. And I was a young man and ready to socialize, right? Ready to make friends. And then I met my wife, and we became friends and became closer and closer as friends. And then, you know, of course, thoughts of marriage began to pop up in my mind. So, you know, I want to share with you, before I look at these different issues here. You know, many times cross-cultural relationships seem exciting, right? You know, oh, wow, you know, somebody from some other place, you know, and it's true. They are, you know, exciting and fascinating and interesting, but you need to also remember that they are full of challenges, right? So if a marriage within a culture has challenges, you can be sure that a marriage cross-culturally has even greater challenges. Okay. I want to say that the rewards are just as great. Okay. The rewards are great. But you must always remember that cross-cultural marriages come with extra challenges. And you know, sometimes these challenges might not reveal themselves while you're dating. Okay. Sometimes they only reveal themselves after you get married. Okay. And it's like that, I think, in you know, many relationships. So you have that honeymoon stage, right? And then reality sets in, and sometimes that's where the challenges come, right? So now today, in today's society, intercultural marriages, cross-cultural marriages are becoming more and more common, more and more common, okay? And probably we can, we can think of the reasons for that, globalization, technological advances, have contributed to this. Social media, right? The ease of travel, that's all contributed to the increase in the number of cross-cultural marriages. And so people are finding more and more common ground, okay? Common ground upon which they feel confident enough to build a long-term relationship. Okay, so, let's see. I want to say something, and, this probably comes from having a more conservative mindset and maybe a more religious mindset. And I think it's not only, this does not only apply to intercultural, cross-cultural relationships. I think it applies to every kind of relationship. Don't enter into a friendship or a dating relationship unless you are serious, okay? Unless you are serious about wanting to, I'm not going to say get married, but to move in that direction, right? To move in that direction. And don't date seriously without a certain level of commitment to wanting to enter into a marriage, okay? Because I think that is if you do that, if you don't have that mindset, if you don't have that way of thinking, I think you're not being fair, right? I don't think you're being fair to that person that you are having the relationship with. So keep that in mind, because I think that's foundational, okay? All right, so what are some of the things that we need to be aware of? Let's see how much. Marlene, you're going to have to tell me when I'm going too long. I'll try to go through this fairly quickly. The first thing that I put on the list there is the role of religion. And, this is, for me, this is very important, okay? Because for me, religion is important, right? So therefore, I put this at the top of my list. And for some people who do not consider religion to be very important in their lives, they may have a different perception, okay? They may have a different perspective. But for me, if you enter into a marriage relationship with somebody who does not share the same religious philosophy that you do, it will make things quite difficult. It'll make things quite difficult. If you are both committed to your religion. Do you follow what I'm saying? If somebody is not committed to their religion, it doesn't really matter, Maybe, I know they have that saying, what do they call it? A Christian KTP, right? If you're not serious and religion is not important in your life, and yeah, then that's a different situation, okay? But I think I'm talking to most young people here today in this class who are more serious about the role of religion in their lives, right, in your lives. And so that is why I want to say this to you. Be careful of entering into relationships with those who do not have the same affiliation, the same, not affiliation, the same commitment to your religion, okay? Of course, one spirituality can go up and down and up and down, okay? I know that, all right? And that's just a fact of life. But your religion influences so much of your life, in so many areas that, you know, it can affect what you think about diet, about days of worship, about how you worship, about where you worship, you know, what you celebrate, when you celebrate, how you're going to bring up your children. All of those things are fundamentally tied to the role of religion in your life. And so that's, you know, something that I want to share with you. Just keep in mind that it is best, yeah, it is best if you can share the same religious perspectives and understanding as your spouse or your future spouse. Okay, what about gender roles? You know, society has, different cultures have different perspectives on what women should do and what men should do, right? And I can tell you many different experiences that I've had. You know, I remember in Manado one time, my wife was washing our car in the front yard, and somebody walked by and said, "How come you're washing the car? You know, that's not what women should be doing." You understand what I'm saying? And so it was something that was not so acceptable in terms of a Manadonese cultural context. You know, it may have ramifications for who does the work in the kitchen, right? You know, who does the cooking? You see, there are some cultures, some societies where the kitchen is the domain of the woman, right? And that men don't even go in there. And so these things can very much impact how successful your marriage is. Okay. So, you know, in many societies, men are supposed to be the breadwinners, right? Go out to work. And where do the women stay? At home, right? At home, looking after the children. Okay, so that is traditional. But remember that in some places that women are the ones who go out and also become breadwinners, you might say. And sometimes you have house husbands, right, who stay at home and care for the children. So, you know, you just have to understand how diametrically opposed are your perceptions of gender. Yeah, the role of a woman, what a woman can do, what a man can do, and, you know, is the man to be dominant? You know, are you equal? These things can impact your relationship. And you will determine these during your dating time, right? As you date, you will see, oh, he's like that, or she's like that, and she's expecting this, and yeah, so on and so forth, okay? Another thing that you should be aware of is that in some cultures, the extended family is very important, right? And other families, it's more the nuclear family that's important. Mom, dad, maybe, and children, right? But in other cultures, it's more than that, right? It's uncles and aunties, and, you know, they're all important and they're all part of that extended family. And if you come from a situation where your concept of the family is a nuclear family, and then you marry somebody whose concept is an extended family, you can see how there may be room, maybe opportunity for what? Conflict, right? Misunderstanding, and there can be conflict there, you know, because extended family may even involve financial support, right? So you need to help, so send money to so-and-so, or send money to so-and-so. So you're sending money to the extended family to help them. And it may be different from your partner, right? So these are things that you need to be very aware of when you enter into a dating relationship with somebody from a different culture. Of course, there are other things like etiquette that are involved in that, traditions that you also need to be aware of. So family visits. Sometimes in some cultures, family can show up anytime, anywhere. You know, it doesn't matter. Come on in, you're welcome. You know, and there's a different concept of privacy, right? Privacy, different concept. And if you're not careful, these different perceptions can you know, hit against each other and can create conflict. So make sure you understand, you know, how you are going to deal with these differences, right? How are you going to deal with these differences? And you need to be proactive. Don't wait. If you wait, you're going to run into problems. You're going to have headaches, right? So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind as you date across cultures. Okay. And remember that sometimes family visits can be for a long time, right? They can stay for a long time, and it's not easy to say, well, thank you for coming, you know. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, prejudices and the blame game. You know, it doesn't matter how liberal you are, how open-minded you are, or your spouse is, you know, often we have prejudices, right? And sometimes, you know, attitudes that are not so good. And sometimes we got these from our own culture, you know, and we must be aware of these in our lives. And these things can come up at different times, and you have to be very careful in not allowing them to damage your relationship. And this is when I was in the library before I got married, and I was looking, what can I learn? I remember this. And it said that you must not look for a place to hang your blame. Okay. What we tend to do as human beings is we tend to blame somebody else. Okay. And in an intercultural communication setting, what often can happen? What do you think can happen? You can begin when you're faced with a problem, right? And maybe your way of dealing with the problem is different, and that person and your spouse's way of dealing with that problem is different, and you're upset and you're angry, and what that person does doesn't work well. What do you sometimes do? You blame them, right? And sometimes we blame it on their culture. And this is very, very dangerous. Okay. Never hang your personal problems or your personal issues and blame it on cultural differences. Okay. If you disparage your spouse or your partner's culture, you are heading for disaster, right? because like it or not, our culture is very precious to us, right? Very precious to us. And when somebody speaks against your culture, and when somebody blames your culture, how do you feel? Hurt deeply, right? You've hurt deeply. And so in a dating across culture, be very careful. Do not blame personal issues or lifestyle, life issues, and blame it on somebody's culture. Oh, that's because you're so-and-so. That's because you come from there, you know. Okay. Be very careful of doing that. I'm not going to be specific here, okay? We could be specific, but I'm just going to give you some general principles, right? That you can take with you, that can maybe help you as you enter into or have the, I don't know, you may have the opportunity to have a cross-cultural relationship. Another thing there is parenting, you know. Even couples from the same culture have conflicts, right? In how to bring up children, right? How to bring up children, and you know, the routines and the way of doing the parenting style that you're going to use, the techniques you're going to use. You know, maybe you came from a very disciplinarian family, and maybe your spouse came from a rather relaxed parenting style. Ooh, it can cause very, very serious problems, right? So these are things you need to understand before you get married, all right? Before you get married. And so how to bring up your children. Are you going to teach them both languages? Or are you going to teach them one language? What are you going to do, right? You need to be aware of this. How are you going to do that? I'm so thankful that my 3 sons all can speak Indonesian and they speak English, you know. So it's so nice, you know. We can communicate with our families, and it's so beautiful. And I'd like to add this to the list, you know. If you're serious about a relationship with a person from a different culture, learn their language. Learn their language. Okay. If you don't, yeah, you're missing out on so many wonderful opportunities. And remember, it's even though people have different perspectives of extended family and families, when you marry somebody, you're also marrying the family, right? You're also marrying the family. And if you cannot speak to the family, oh, you're kind of restricting yourself, aren't you? You know, and so, you know, the best thing that I ever did is to learn Indonesian, and more specifically to learn Manadonese, you know, to learn Manadonese. And it's been invaluable, and I'm so happy. My children are so happy that they can speak Indonesian, because they can speak to their family members, you know, and it's such a nice thing to do. So that's, you know, rather important. Okay. And, you know, you have goals for your child. You have, you know, you want your children to accomplish certain things. Make sure that you have the same, you know, mindset. You're in agreement. You're in agreement. Even though there are times you can, you know, for differences, but you want to be harmonious. Oops. Okay. Number 7, where will home be? Where will home be? Yeah, that's something you'll have to think about, because you cannot be in 2 places at the same time, right? You know, you can either be at your cultural as a home, or you can be in the home of your partner or spouse, right? And I think you understand what that means, right? That when you are living in a culture that is not your own, it has many stresses. Okay, it's many stresses. And you must be willing, if you to make that commitment, you know, to say, okay, you know, I understand the challenges, but I'm going to you know, I'm going to stay where my wife lives, or stay where my husband lives. And you know, it's an important decision that needs to be made. And so there's a lot we can say about that, but you know, just keep that in mind, that at some point in time, you're going to have to decide, You're going to have to decide, where is it going to be? Here or there? There or here, and be aware of the challenges that you're going to encounter when you make that move, or your spouse will encounter, or your partner will encounter when they make that move. Okay. And last but not least in this section here is your personality. It doesn't really, even when you date somebody who is of the same culture as you, if your partner doesn't have a nice personality, things are not going to go that well, right? Some people are easygoing, right? They can adapt. They adapt readily to new ideas, new attitudes, and other people are stiff and so, stuck in their ways, stubborn. They do not want to change. You need to look at your spouse. You need to look at not your spouse, you need to look at your partner, to see how accommodating is my partner, how open to change, how open to adjusting is he, or is he stuck in one way? Is he very dogmatic, right? And you can be sure that if your partner is unyielding, dogmatic, stubborn, unwilling to do things differently, your relationship is not going to end up well, probably. Okay, because a cross-cultural relationship has less chance of succeeding if both partners are not open and flexible and good-natured about the many unexpected things that life will bring to you as an intercultural couple. Okay, so please keep this in mind. You know your personality, right? You know how flexible you are. You know how willing you are to entertain different ideas, thoughts, how open you are. If you're not, if you're somebody who is set in their ways and not willing to adjust and to change, my advice to you is don't get into a intercultural relationship, because it's probably not going to turn out very well for you. Or if your partner is like that, think twice, okay, about entering into that kind of relationship. So I think I'm going to stop here, and I'm sure there's so much that we can say about dating across cultures, but I've given you just some general principles, okay, that you can think about as you, I don't know, if you ever have the opportunity to, have a friendship with somebody from a different culture. So Marlene, I'm going to hand the time back over to you now, and I'm going to get out of this here. There we go. And can you see me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So Marlene, I'm going to give the time back to you. If your students have any questions, or anybody has any questions they'd like to ask, I'll be happy to try to address them.
Okay, thanks again, Sir Hubert. That's really nice. Hope the students will learn something.
I hope so.
Okay, everybody, do you have any question?
Ma'am, I have.
Yes, go
Hi.
ahead, Beatrix.
Hello, sir. I'm
Hi,
Beatrix.
Hi.
Beatrix Angelica. You said before that we don't judge someone by the cover. It's like a generalization.
Mm-hmm.
But it is okay if we judge them first. I mean that we have the perception as a general, so that we can be careful to take a relationship with them.
Yes.
So that is it okay or not? Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
good question. Very good question. And so I think what you're saying is we study these paradigms or these descriptions of cultures and cultural values in order to understand them, right? In order to see how we can identify the different cultural characteristics of that group, right? So on the one hand, we're engaging in trying to analyze the different cultural components, right? Yet, when we engage with somebody in an intercultural communication setting, we must try to put these generalizations that we have learned aside. So there seems to be like a conflict right there, right? There seems to be a conflict there. And so these generalizations that we have, remember we said that they are like two ends of a continuum, right? And people can be in different areas on this continuum. And definitely knowing the generalities of a cultural group are very, very beneficial because they can help you understand why people value certain things, why people do certain things, right? Okay. But we must be careful of taking these generalities and applying them to individuals within that culture, right? Because we run the risk of stereotyping, right? We run the risk of generalizing. So while generalizations have value and are important, and we should try to know them as best we can, we want to try to put those aside when we encounter somebody and let that person reveal themselves. You see, don't prejudge them. You see, don't prejudge them. Don't say, oh, he's from Indonesia, therefore he has this, he's like that, or she's like that. You know, we don't want to do that. We want to let that person reveal themselves. And if they say something that is in harmony with the generalizations, okay, great, you know. But it might be they do something that's not. I think I gave you the example when I was in Thailand. And, you know, I was shocked at one time. I had one of my colleagues, subordinates, had a very different view of the monarchy, okay, which was not, you know, didn't fit the generalizations that I knew I had learned, you see, about the Thai people. And her perspective was very different, you see. So I was coming to the relationship with the generalization in my head, you see, and then I was confronted with a unique individual perspective, and woo, it made me realize that we must be careful. You know, we must be careful of how we analyze, you know, cultures and people. Yeah, I hope that helps you, Beatrix. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. What a good lesson that I have. Thank you.
Any more questions? Anybody?
Don't be shy. And remember, you can ask your question in Indonesian.
I have a question.
Did somebody have?
Intan, sir.
Hi. Intan?
Yes. As we know, we can see in our area, especially around me, many people do not care, and most people are indifferent to empathy, and I think that's hard. So how is it that we can sincerely empathize with people? That's my question, sir.
Okay. So how can we empathize with people, right? Okay. You know, as I listed there, empathy is one of our character traits, right? Empathy basically means putting yourself in somebody else's position, right? Now, you're very correct that it is something that many people in society are not willing to do because we are, you know, basically, you know, we are selfish people, right? You know, and we are unwilling to take time, we're unwilling to sacrifice for somebody else, you know. And but good character, yeah, good character, noble character requires us to be empathetic. Okay, so you're talking about the situation around you, and I'm sure you're talking about your own culture, right? People that you interact with in your own culture, and you know that you see perhaps a lack of empathy, right? A lack of empathy. Not people do not show empathy, and I think that that is one of the things that is hurting society. That is you know, in a way destroying our society. That we are not sensitive to other people and how they feel about things and how they see things, and so much hate comes as a result of this. You know, when people are unwilling to walk in another man's shoes and to experience what he is experiencing. Now, when we transfer this over to intercultural communication, how can we be empathetic, right? I think that if you can identify with that person and their, for example, when you are learning a language or a culture, you're overwhelmed sometimes, right? You're overwhelmed and it's so frustrating. So, you know, if you could enter into that person's frustration and help that person see that, okay, you can identify with their frustration, and you can share with that person maybe what they can try or what you have done that maybe, you know, maybe has helped you be successful, or things that you've learned that other people have said may be successful. And by doing that, that person feels that you care, right? That you care about them. And then they are more willing to put themselves in your position too, you see. So that all leads to a groundwork for a good relationship. And that will lead to better trust as one of the main ingredients to good communication, is when the audience trusts you, right? So yeah, even though don't be discouraged, even though you don't see much empathy being shown around you, perhaps, always remember that empathy works, okay? And empathy is very important. I hope that helps you, Intan.
Yes, sir, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more question? Hannah Elizabeth? I thought you were going to ask
Yes,
question.
ma'am. Hello, sir.
Hi.
I want to ask a question.
Okay.
How we can accept the different culture of our boyfriend? They have different culture with us.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay, of course you can apply some of the principles that we looked at already, okay, that we discussed some of them. You know, while you were saying that, if you have a cross-cultural relationship, or if you're in one, it doesn't, it doesn't necessarily mean that, cross-cultural relationships can also be cross-ethnic relationships, right? Or cross, how can I say, tribal, relationships. It could mean maybe someone who is from Minahasa or from Manado or from North Sulawesi, and somebody who is from South Sulawesi, right? Where you have very different cultures, right? Okay, you have different cultures, even though the national unifying culture is Indonesian, you still have the ethnic differences, you still have those cultural differences, that many of the things that we have, that I shared with you, also apply. They also apply, right? Maybe maybe to a little lesser degree, because you still have a lot in common, but there are still many differences between different people groups in Indonesia, right? And all I can say to you is, without going through all of them again, is be that loving and lovable person, and that'll go a long way to helping your cross-cultural or your inter-ethnic relationship. Okay, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question. If it doesn't, please tell me. And you're welcome to repeat it again.
Is that clear enough, Elizabeth, or you need more explanation?
It's clear, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
All right, Elizabeth.
Okay, any more question, everyone? Anybody? Okay, so if there is no more question, once again, I would like to say thank you, Sir Hubert, on behalf of our cross-cultural understanding subject. I really appreciate your time. It's too late for you to sleep for the last 2 weeks because of us. But it's an honor to have you.
The honor is mine. I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to do this. And actually, I'm not so proficient in the technology of Zoom and how to do all the fancy things, but I'm from the old school,
But you did well. But you did well. You learn fast. So once again, thank you very much. So we are going to close our program today, and then I would like to ask Patrick to lead us for a prayer, and for Afni and Nurwinda, who's not a Christian, we are going to have a Christian prayer for today, and you may follow us with your own beliefs. Thank you for joining us. Afni and Nurwinda, actually my ex. That's my ex. My ex students back then when I was in Balikpapan.
Oh, how nice.
They were they're not education, faculty of letters students.
Okay.
I actually have one question, if you don't mind.
Please.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
You were saying that you were having a multicultural marriage, right? How long did it take for you to finally understand each other?
38 years.
Yes.
And still counting.
Still counting.
Afni, it's an ongoing process that never ends,
That's true.
Yeah. So you know, it's always, you're always doing better and better and better, you know. You make mistakes and you learn from your mistakes. And but I think that, you know, having certain understanding, certain knowledge of certain principles and expectations help me, you know, through the difficult times. And so, yeah, the short answer to your question is that it's a never-ending learning process, you know. And I think even a marriage within a
That's true.
culture, you know, you always doing better, right? You're always learning, you're always improving, you're always, you know, uh, you're always understanding better, understanding yourself better, and becoming more patient, becoming more, you know, hopefully kinder, you know, things like that. So yeah, it's a long process, but you know, at each stage along the way is good, you know, it's good, but you never ever arrive at a perfect, you know, at the perfect situation. It's always approximations to something better, you know, something better all the time. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, because it happened with me also.
What's that?
It happened with every married couple,
Yes,
right? Yeah.
definitely. And you know, as I said, in a intercultural, cross-cultural setting, you just have to work. You have to work that much harder, you know, because of the differences, right? So you have to work harder. At least I think so. All marriages you have to work hard, but if you go cross-cultural, just keep in mind it's going to be extra hard, right? But also extra enjoyable. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Afni.
All right. Any more question? Anybody?
Ma'am, can I?
Sure.
Oh, okay, sure. Go ahead.
That's for about lifestyle. What is the best way to prevent epidemic of obesity?
Intan, can you repeat your question?
Oh, what is the best to prevent epidemic of obesity? That's from my friend question.
I'm sorry, it's not so clear. I'm having difficulty hearing.
Can you speak a little bit slow, Intan?
What is the best way to prevent epidemic of obesity?
The best way to prevent what?
Yes.
Obesity? Is it obesity?
Yes.
Obesity? Uh-huh.
That's the way. What is the best way to prevent obesity, sir?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're off topic a little bit, but it's an important topic, right? Yeah, that is one of the biggest problems in society today, right? How to prevent obesity, how to lose weight, and you know, that's something I struggle with. You know, how to maintain an optimum weight. You know, it is, of course, it is a two-pronged approach, right? One is physical activity, which can be exercise, you know, or some kind of exercise. It doesn't have to be exercise like running or jogging. It could be gardening or whatever, you know, active, burning calories, right? And then of course the other aspect is intake, right? So, you know, your intake of calories, and that is probably the most challenging part, because our appetites are so strong, and we struggle so much with our appetites. But simple food is always better. You know, unprocessed food is always better. So if you're wanting to lose weight, avoid the fatty foods, oily foods, fried foods, right? And eat more of the natural grains and natural nuts. Um, and of course, less sugar, right? Sugar is a killer, right? And you know, there's so many hidden calories, right? In so many foods, there's so many hidden calories that you have to be careful of. It may seem that you're not eating too much, but the content of the things that you eat could be loaded with fat and sugar. And you know, I know this is very difficult for Indonesians, and I struggled with it because I adopted an Indonesian lifestyle in many respects. And for me to eat without rice was very difficult, you know, very difficult. And rice is very dangerous when it comes to obesity, okay? And so my experience with it, you know, that when I eat rice, and I love rice, I put on a lot of weight. So I've tried now for the last while to substitute rice with other things that are multigrain and more natural, and definitely it helps. It helps tremendously. So if you are eating lots of rice and refined foods, try to lessen those. Eat more vegetables, more fruit in your diet, and slowly but surely you will lessen your weight and overcome obesity. It's not easy. It's not easy, but by the grace of God, all things are possible, and we can do it, right? We can do it. Intan, does that answer your question?
But she said fried food is the favorite food in Indonesia.
It's my favorite food, you know. It's my favorite food. But the reality and the fact is that, of course, maybe if you live a very active life and, you just eat a little bit, but the challenge is we cannot eat a little bit, right? And especially when you add dabu, then, a little bit becomes 3 plates, and, that's a challenge, right? Because we definitely overeat with spices, Yeah.
Dabu is yum, sir. All right. Any more question? Anybody? Okay, so if there is no more question, we are going to close our class today. So we are going to have a closing prayer. So Beatrix, please lead us for a prayer.
Okay. Let us pray. Our graciously Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your blessing on us until this time. Today we have learned the good lesson for today, that when we make friends with others, especially with different cultures, we should be loving and lovable to communicate with them. Now, Lord, we also pray for us so that we can understand and apply it in our daily life. Then we also pray to Sir Hebert that has already explained for this presentation. Please bless him so that he can speak in the next time when we have an opportunity. Then we also pray for his family so that you can bless them all. And we also pray for this world, God, that still pandemic. Please take it over, God, so that we can do our activities as well as usually. Thank you, God. Please hearing and answer our prayer. Thank you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for today. I'll see you again next week with the different lecture. And then for those who'd like to stay for a while and have a chat with Mr. Heber, you may stay for a while. And then those who's going to have another class or have something to do important to do, see you again then